debate for the future of our country.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors.
Fitch's decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States.
Will the great debate between the governor of Florida and the governor of California finally happen? Also, U.S. debt got downgraded for the first time since 1994. What does that mean for the rest of us? Fauci and whether or not he got caught in the biggest lie he's ever made, and Devin Archer, Hunter's BFF, goes on live with Tucker. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Thursday, August 3rd, year of our Lord, 2023. A lot to catch up on, as there is always every day, because the news cycle is ever spinning so fast all the time. But I think one of the biggest things that I thought was fascinating, interesting, and things that I'd like to talk about from a horse race perspective, and by horse race I mean the political race for president of the United States, is this. Gavin Newsom, a couple of months ago, the governor of California, who is definitely running for president, issued a challenge to the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis. Now, Ron DeSantis yesterday went on Hannity and accepted that offer to debate Gavin Newsom and said this. I'll get to the clip really quick, and we'll discuss the ramifications of that, because this is all fascinating from a how politics works standpoint. Just really quick, check this out.
This is the debate for the future of our country, because you have people like Joe Biden. They would love to see the Californication of the United States. Biden may not even be the nominee. You could have Gavin Newsom. You could have Kamala Harris. And I think if we go down that direction, that's going to accelerate American decline.
Yeah, that I think is fascinating. Just this is the actual debate. I think I would love to have this debate. California versus Florida. Who's governing their state better? I'm going to play a clip in a little bit from CNN, interestingly enough, where they went inside a Walgreens in San Francisco and the ice cream was chained up. Yes, the ice cream was chained up. But that, I think, is the debate that people should actually have. Look, governing is a thing that has to happen. And are you doing a good job at it, or are you doing a bad job at it? Governance is not a compilation of ideas that sound good when you're making political campaign speeches. It actually is tangible things that either work or don't. And if you're going to debate what ideas work, you can have, we do have laboratories of democracies, which are various states that do things differently. And if you look at states and see who's doing things better and worse, I would love to have the debate between California and Florida. Here is the thing that is fascinating. Gavin Newsom issued the challenge to Ron DeSantis several months ago. This is, I think, before Joe Biden announced that he's running for re-election. This was before even Donald Trump said that he was going to run for president. Gavin said this a long time ago, and it's been out there and kind of floating around. Will Ron DeSantis accept the challenge to debate Gavin Newsom? At the time, Gavin had just started making headway into becoming a national figure on the Democratic stage. He had just started to go around to different states randomly, neglecting his own state, and talk about his beautiful ideas that have driven California into the ground. He had just started all of that. So saying to Ron DeSantis at the time when Gavin said it, I want to debate Ron DeSantis on the... He knew Ron DeSantis wasn't going to accept that, because at the time, Ron DeSantis seemed to be the next hand-picked RNC nominee for president of the United States. time that Gavin said, I want to debate Ron DeSantis, Gavin was trying to make a name for himself on the national stage. Obviously, he has a name for himself. He was trying to get in people's faces and said, I want to debate this guy. At the time, Ron DeSantis had no business, no upside to debating Gavin Newsom. At the time, he was being ushered in as the presumptive nominee for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. Several months have gone by, and things have changed. Now, Gavin Newsom is pretty prominent on the national stage due to varying other things. In Washington, D.C., in tight circles in Washington, D.C., he's being talked about as the replacement nominee for the Democratic Party instead of Joe Biden, who is disastrously old and should not run for president of the United States. If you want a Democrat to win, you should not want Joe Biden to run. I'm not sure how many of those of you are watching right now, but he's not a good candidate for the Democrats in 2024. And not only has Gavin vaulted himself to national prominence, Ron DeSantis did not turn out to be the Republican. It did not turn out to be the coronation of the Republican nominee that he thought and that a lot of people thought back when Gavin Newsom issued this debate challenge. Ron DeSantis is doing horribly in the polls. He last week fired a bunch of his campaign staffers. I think he's at like 19%. He fell below 20%. He's behind Trump by like 40 points. And so the roles have literally, the positions have flipped exactly. Gavin doesn't want to debate Ron DeSantis because then he has to talk about actual facts and issues. Ron DeSantis is like, I will debate anybody who will get me more TV time because I am doing so poorly in the polls. Isn't that freaking fascinating? Gavin, up until we came on this show this morning, Gavin had not responded to any of the tweets, any of the TV appearance, anything since last night. I think his last tweet, or X, I don't know what we call it now, it was like 20 hours ago or something like that. So he's not jumped on the chance to debate Ron DeSantis. Now, I hope it happens. I hope that this does happen. Having said that, if a debate were to happen, remember, Gavin issued this debate challenge when he knew that DeSantis wouldn't take the bait. That was just true. And now that DeSantis is saying, yes, I am curious if it actually happens, I don't think Gavin actually would do it. I would love to see it, but my money is not on whether or not. If the bet is whether or not it happens, my money is probably on no. And the reason for that is because of clips like this. This is from CNN. Yes, CNN the other day. And I thought it was fascinating, a fascinating look inside the governance of the most populous state in the union, a state in which the governor is trying to become the president of the United States and make the entire country look like this.
Richie Greenberg walked into a San Francisco Walgreens when he saw in the frozen food section this.
Chains, heavy chains that went from padlock to padlock on both sides of the doors, and this was bizarre, something I'd never seen before. This is just more icing on the cake, telling us that rampant crime has become a regular part of life.
So typical that in the 30 minutes we were at this Walgreens, we watched 3 people, including this man, steal.
Did that guy pay? Did that guy pay?
Yeah, so that is what Gavin would be going up against and trying to defend if he were to actually debate in Florida. Chaining up ice cream and just watching people walk out can't be a, difficult thing to defend if you're Gavin Newsom. But anyways, enough of that. I just thought whether or not they debate, I hope they do, and I hope America watches, but the whole political thing, kind of irrelevant, but I just thought it was fascinating and interesting that the only reason that this is being talked about now is because the the positions have flipped, and Gavin Newsom now is trying to avoid Ron DeSantis because he doesn't want to get knocked down by facts and reason. And Ron DeSantis desperately wants eyeballs on his campaign. Speaking of governance and government, we won't touch on this too long, but the U.S. debt has been downgraded. First time since 1994 that Finch's specifically downgraded the U.S. debt from a AAA to a AA+. I actually think this is a much bigger deal than people are making it out to be. I think one of the reasons why it's not a bigger deal because it's kind of a difficult thing to understand. Like, what does that even mean? Layman's terms, and I'm not even sure that I'm the best, not even sure. I'm definitely not the best person to try and explain this in detail and in depth. But when you're purchasing bonds or debt, the ability of the debtor to pay the debt back matters a lot. In banks, if you're less qualified to take out a loan, you'll get a higher interest rate because the bank knows that they need to be able to recoup their costs if and when possibly you default on that loan. Same thing applies for other debt instruments. And rather than interest rates being able to either deter or attract people, they look at credit ratings or debt ratings. If this person is definitely 100% going to pay back this loan, let's say it's a billionaire that took out a $50,000 loan for some reason, that loan is going to be the highest possible rating. And let's just say Joe Schmo here, who has been unemployed for, I don't know, a decade, and is taking out a $1 million loan. Somehow the bank gave it to him. That loan is going to be rated very, very poorly. So one of the rating agencies, Finch, has said that the U.S. debt is not rated as highly as possible. We'll hear from Janet Yellen and how she's responding to that, and then make some commentary of our own, talking about whether or not it makes sense for the U.S. debt to get downgraded. Watch this, and we'll discuss on the other side.
Fitch's decision is puzzling in light of the economic strength we see in the United States. I strongly disagree with Fitch's decision, and I believe it is entirely unwarranted. Its flawed assessment is based on outdated data and fails to reflect improvements across a range of indicators, including those related to governance, that we've seen over the past 2.5 years. Despite the gridlock, we've seen both parties come together to pass legislation to resolve the debt limit as well as to make historic investments in our infrastructure and American competitiveness.
There's a couple of things she says that I think are freaking fascinating. First of all, talking about how well the economy is doing. Inflation, relative to GDP, the amount of actual real dollars being earned, retained, spent, all of that sort of stuff is not actually as strong as a lot of people are saying it is when you look at real income versus dollar amount income. Now, I understand that dollar amounts do affect the actual treasury notes and treasury bonds. Inflation is a great thing for debt. We won't get into why that is. Basically, if you have $1 million that you took a loan out on, and then all of a sudden $1 million is like worthless, the debt is going to be easier to pay back if inflation goes super high. So the federal government, like it or not, both parties tend to love high inflation, not from a spending standpoint, but because we can ease the burden on the actual national debt. That being said, what was the last thing I think? Oh, she said, talking about the debt ceiling, saying, well, I have no idea why anyone would doubt the U.S. debt because both parties, even though they have gridlock in D.C., have come together to resolve the debt issue. Yeah, resolving the debt issue doesn't mean saying, oh yeah, let's just increase the debt limit, because that's what people have been doing for the entirety of the time. What is it? We've increased the debt limit like 78 times. It could be even more than that. For some reason, 78 sounds like a number that I've said before. But we've increased the debt limit a ton of times. And to sit there and say that the debt limit increase is resolving the issue in a bipartisan way seems to not be a very good or compelling argument as to why the U.S. debt is better or worse than anything else. What I mean to say is it's not a good argument to say that the debt should not have been downgraded. If you're going to say, hey, if you and your wife have a credit card, or your husband, depending on if you're a man or woman, or whatever. Anyways, if you and your spouse say you have credit cards and you have a massive spending problem, the solution, resolving the credit card spending problem, would not be taking out more credit cards. But that's how Congress, quote unquote, resolves the debt ceiling, according to the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. And she's curious and has no idea why the U.S. debt would get downgraded. Now, just really quick, not to continue going on about this, because I think this is the stuff that actually matters. Like, all of the politics stuff that even I get sucked into it matters minimally when it comes to the greater picture of whether or not the U.S. is going to devolve into bankruptcy and default. The same credit unions or the same credit rating agencies also, remember, played a huge role in the financial debacle that was the 2008-2007 housing crisis. If you remember, the credit default swap bundles had a whole bunch of, I'm using those terms wrong. The bundling of mortgages into financial instruments, debt instruments, were rated by the credit agencies as super good. These are super safe investments. The problem is that the financial institutions that were bundling those mortgages also threw in a bunch of terrible mortgages in there. And the rating agencies said, no, these are still fine. These are AAA, A plus ratings. These are all going to be okay. And so a bunch of people bought those based on the ratings that the agencies gave them. The rating agencies gave them. I think Moody's specifically wouldn't budge on downgrading any of those mortgage debts, even though they were terrible loans. So people flocked to those, and then all of a sudden those bad mortgages ended up falling off the wagon, and then we all know what happens from there. So I don't know why I decided to mention that. Basically, the rating agencies are their own autonomous thing, and so even though I just made an entire case as to why downgrading makes sense, also be cautious of the rating agencies. I think what I'm ultimately getting at is trust no one. Trust no one on anything at any point, especially when it comes to the government. Speaking of trusting no one at any point for anything, Fauci, earlier this week, got caught in his biggest lie ever, according to the New York Post. Now, I understand that Fauci being caught in a lie is basically me repeating myself, and oh my gosh, I look at the article that I had pulled up for this is now turned into a bunch of gobbledygook. Anyways, so we won't go with that. I'll go from memory here. Fauci, in new emails that have just been released, apparently also took the lab leak theory very seriously at the beginning. He also was under the impression that, yeah, it probably came out of this lab, and oh shoot, I sent money to that lab. And then continued to lie constantly. So at the very beginning of COVID, Fauci and a bunch of people, according to newly released emails, entertained the idea of, and took seriously the idea of, yeah, this is probably a lab leak. And then continued to lie about it up to this day. He's still lying about it. Here's a clip of Ron Paul talking to Dr. Fauci way back when, which, let me see if I can play this video and then pull these actual emails up, because they were great and I wanted to read them specifically. But the article has turned to mush. But let me play this and we'll discuss on the other side.
Do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. You do not know what you are talking about.
Okay, well, that was all of that. Did not get me. Oh, here we go. Here's the New York Post's Fauci caught in his biggest lie ever. Let's see if this link works. It is appearing to not. The bottom line is emails surfacing now show that Dr. Fauci did know what he was talking about regarding, one, NIH funding to the Wuhan lab, and two, the fact that, this thing definitely 100% came out. Here we go. New York Post says this: Senator Rand Paul, did I say Ron Paul? I think I did. I meant Rand. Has announced a criminal referral for Dr. Fauci to the Department of Justice over apparent lying during a congressional hearing in 2021, which you just watched. Fauci insisted repeatedly that the NIH held and never funded gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Paul contended at the time, in arguing with Fauci, that the research done on the virus at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which did get U.S. funding, matched the NIH's own description of gain-of-function research, and he was just playing word games. So Fauci said, no, it's not gain-of-function, and Rand Paul was like, yeah, by your own definition, it was gain-of-function. But a newly surfaced email from February of 2020 about the COVID task force called between him, his associates, and UK scientist Jeremy Farrar shows Fauci not only using the term gain of function to describe the work at Wuhan, but highlighting serious misgivings about the virus being of natural origin. So newly surfaced emails from February of 2020 say Fauci used the terms gain of function in the email and was like, yeah, I don't know about the natural origin story. And then Fauci went to continually push this story around the globe over and over and over again, and in front of Congress. Lying to Congress is a crime. This is, dang it, this is kind of tangential, but I also thought it was fascinating here too. MSNBC posted a thing about Donald Trump getting indicted yesterday, which, tangent on tangent on tangent, isn't it weird how I'm over that story already. I was like, can we talk about that again today? That happened 2 days ago. That's old news. But anyways, MSNBC posted something on Instagram about Trump's indictment. And fascinating, because I commented and said, let's also indict, Hillary for if defrauding the public, defrauding the American people is the crime, and saying words is proof that you've committed that crime, then didn't Hillary's campaign, which caused the tens of millions of dollars in U.S. resources to look into the fake Russian collusion story, isn't that defrauding the country? Isn't Fauci lying to Congress defrauding the American people? Isn't all of those people that signed on to the Hunter Biden laptop is a Russian disinformation story? Isn't that defrauding the country of proper intelligence to make decisions? How many people? Isn't Joe Biden's selling out of the forced firing of the Ukrainian prosecutor looking into his son's business? Isn't that defrauding the country? I said, shouldn't we also indict all of these people? And the fascinating thing to me is the comments were, why? Why would we do that? It wasn't, oh, now you're playing whataboutism, which I think is unfairly used. Whataboutism is fairness and consistency. So I completely disregard those comments. But the majority of the comments were, why? In other words, they have no freaking idea of this sort of stuff. When I make the comment of, if you're going to indict Donald Trump for this, because of this, you have to go indict a bunch of other people, including Dr. Fauci. The problem is a bunch of people on the lefty side of the aisle don't know about any of this sort of stuff. Now, I understand that I have a perspective. I come at things with a certain point of view. I get that. But at the same time, I am pretty dang aware of the flaws of the people and institutions that are on my side of the fence. If there were charges brought against Dr. Fauci, I think a lot of people, especially in this particular comment thread, would go, Why is that happening? That's so weird. It must be because Republicans hate him. Whereas on the other side, if charges were brought against, I'm not going to point out any specific congresspeople here, but there are congresspeople on the Republican side of the aisle that if charges were brought against them, I would be like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I get it. I understand that. It's weird. It's crazy. The whole idea of like not even understanding or knowing why anyone would have the audacity to say, yeah, if you're going to indict Donald Trump, you probably should indict all of these other people because they committed similar or probably they actually committed crimes. And people going, what? And not even having any knowledge of that whatsoever. I don't even know where I am right now. That I was not expecting to go off on that particular thing, and probably shouldn't have. I think we lost a considerable amount of viewership during that kind of cohesive rant about Dr. Fauci and indicting people, which is fine. I don't know. We're here to have fun. You know what? I'm going to save this Tucker thing for tomorrow because I just think it's kind of funny. And it's kind of long, and I want to make sure I hop off here at a reasonable time. I already came on super duper late because, I don't know. Let's just play this really quick. This is Anna Kasparian. If you know Anna Kasparian, she is I think she's wrong about most things. But at the same time, has been showing signs of senility. Senility? Sanity. I had a Joe Biden moment there. She's been showing signs of sanity talking about identity politics. She's a big-time lefty, but said this on the Young Turks show the other day, and this is mostly just, I don't know, it's entertaining that there are still Bill Maher people out there who understand the ridiculousness of their own side. This is about identity politics. Just check this out, and we'll briefly chat about it on the other side.
The biggest change that some of you might have noticed with me is that I'm done with the identitarian garbage. I'm done with it. It is a giant distraction, and the more we focus on it, and it's definitely very obvious to me when it comes to the left, the people who are supposed to be fighting for a better economic system, better economic conditions, better working conditions, all of that stuff pushed aside. Let's focus on the identitarian stuff. And the identitarian stuff by nature divides us and leads to more fights, more conflict, even among us. But that's the point. Anyway, so
I love that because she's right. Again, I disagree with her about so many different things. But in that particular instance, it is good. It makes the case, it helps her make a case better for her arguments when she sticks to sane things. Identity politics is stupid. It is crazy stupid. It's racist and doesn't help anybody. And so while I disagree with the abilities and effectiveness of government programs, which we could probably talk about all day long in our disagreements, it does, yeah, it helps her case more when especially lefties in general, when you call out things that are objectively and obviously stupid, it makes your case better. But anyways, interesting. People coming around to, I don't know, not necessarily our side of the aisle, but at least recognizing reality is always a good thing. But that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to pretty much find me anywhere on the social media networks. Also, I've been told, and I'm not great at uploading this show on the podcast. I will do like bulk at a time. I'm really, really trying to upload the podcasts in a timely manner. And that being said, on any of the podcast networks, you can just type in JOBOB or Daily Caller Live or something and follow that podcast, and you can get the show in podcast form if, for example, you're driving or working or something like that. I've been told to promote that more, and also I will be better at uploading them more consistently. Probably not starting today because I will forget immediately. But just so you know, over the next couple weeks, we can also all go to the podcast platform of your choosing and find this Daily Caller live show, as well as a bunch of other interesting interviews that don't air here. That interviews, conversations, whatever you want to call them, podcasts. Repackaged, put online in audio form. So if you want to find those, you can again type in JOBOB pretty much anywhere, and the links will all take you to all of those places. Let's see. I was gonna say that's gonna do it for us, but I saw these comments in the PID section. David said, "Love the show, thank you." Appreciate that, David. Really appreciate that. And then Chris says, "And you call Joe slow? Get a brain." I don't necessarily disagree with that this morning. But that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Unless we have a baby, God bless America.